Hello, friends. The question to answer is, what is jhana? There are a lot of people these days. No, I would say there aren't really a lot of people these days talking about jhana. Probably, let's say 10 or 20 Dharma teachers and priests are using the term jhana and writing books and recording Dharma talks and producing videos on the subject of jhana. Now the question is just because some of these people are highly respected, do we actually know whether they really know what they're talking about? So let us begin by saying that jhana is a term that appears in the earliest literature of Buddhism, which is reflected in the Pali canon. About a third of the suttas in the first two volumes, the long discourses and the middle discourses, or the Digha Nikaya and the Majjhima Nikaya, respectively, about a third of those suttas use the term jhana. And yet, the vast majority of Theravadan priests and meditation teachers generally don't use the term. So we could say probably more like 99%. Okay, so only 1% of the priests and meditation teachers within a Buddhist context are using the term jhana. So that narrows the field down dramatically. Excuse me. Now the question is of that 1%, how many of them know what they're talking about? And as I said, just because somebody has been a monk for 50 or 60 years and has even written a book on the term jhana and may have even a PhD from a Western university, does not necessarily mean the person really understands what jhana is about. Now, one of the things that I believe needs to be gotten about jhana is that it's not about practice. There are two distinct aspects of the contemplative life. The contemplative life is generally focused on subjective behavior that is generally a regular activity, and we call that practice. And that would be, let's say, the practice of meditation, where somebody either sits, stands, lies down, or walks in a activity that focuses the attention upon some object. And this is what we call concentration. Now, the thing to get about jhana is that it is not just the cognitive activity of concentrating one's attention on an object. It is actually a subjective, non-volitional experience of phenomena that arises from the activity or the practice of meditation. Most of these, this 1% of Theravadan priests and meditation teachers speak of jhana as though it's an activity, and they talk about it as concentration. That's how they translate the two terms samadhi and jhana as the term concentration. And as we native speakers of English understand concentration, concentration is to apply and sustain our attention upon some object or activity. For instance, when we were children and we were in school and we were working on our homework, if our parents saw that our attention was wandering away from our homework, then our parent would say, please Johnny, please Sally, bring your attention back to your homework. And that's what we know of as concentration. Now, the Buddha, in the discourses of the Buddha, the term jhana is used to define the Eightfold of the Noble Eightfold Path. The Pali term for the Eightfold of the Noble Eightfold Path is Samadhi, and it's described. That term is used throughout the suttas, and it is described specifically in the Mahasatipatthana Sutta, which is the 22nd sutra or sutta in the long discourses. And there's a specific paragraph towards the end of that sutra or sutta where the question is asked, what is Samadhi? And then it goes on to describe what Samadhi is. And one of the terms that's used to describe Samadhi is jhana. So jhana is, let's say, the Buddha's definition for the Eightfold of the Noble Eightfold Path. And so the fact that very few Buddhist priests and meditation teachers even refer to the term suggests that maybe not many Buddhist priests and meditation teachers actually know what the Eightfold of the Noble Eightfold Path is. Now, if we scrutinize that paragraph, I think it's the 21st stanza in the 22nd sutra in the long discourses. When we scrutinize that sutra, it defines Samadhi in terms of jhana, and then it defines jhana in terms of basically two Pali terms. One is called piiti, and the other one is called sukha. Piiti and sukha are translated variably in the four Pali to English dictionaries that we have. They actually seem to, depending on the dictionary editor, piiti and sukha seem to have almost the same translation. But regardless of who edited the Pali dictionary, those terms always come out with an ecstatic reference. So basically piiti is generally translated as bliss or rapture, which I think rapture is not an accurate rendition of it, but we'll accept it for now. And sukha is generally translated as bliss or joy. So if Samadhi and jhana are defined in the suttas or by the Buddha in ecstatic terms such as bliss or joy, then why should we believe or consider that samadhi or jhana are merely the cognitive activity of concentration? I don't think we should. I think we should instead consider that perhaps to translate samadhi and jhana as merely the cognitive act of concentration is most probably a translation error because of the ecstatic definition in the suttas for those terms.